What's up guys, Johnny Stedham here at Johnny Jigs, and today we're going to talk about slow pitch jigging rods. You know, there's a huge selection of slow pitch jigging rods that are on the market now, and it can be a little confusing on which one to select, which one to pick, what's the right rod for you. In this video, I'm going to break that down for you. I'm going to simplify it. I'm going to help you guys get into the right rod the first time, go through all the options that, you know, the bells and whistles basically of what you like. So really these rods, you know, you can pick multiple rods from different brands and different configurations, but which one is better for you? And I'm going to help to simplify that today and get you the one that you think is right for you. So number one, let's talk about blanks. So right here I have a Temple Reef Gravitate, and so Temple Reef actually makes quite a few different slow pitch rods. It starts from the Elevate, which is like their most economical one, to the Gravitate, to the Levitate, and then they even have a horse of a different color, which is the Innovate. But a lot of brands will have like their higher end rods, as well as some of the more economical ones. And the difference that you're going to get in those would be guides, which we're going to get into in a little bit, but the blank and just the action that's on the blank. So as you get into, you know, the higher end rods, which you're going to pay a little more money for, you're actually going to get a nice unload from the blank. They're spun properly, and the blanks are generally rated with a number. So they'll call it power 1 or power 2 or power 3, or they give it a name like medium, medium heavy, heavy, extra heavy, right? So that should make a lot of sense to you. So like an extra heavy would be like a power 4, you know? So the higher the number that goes, then the obviously the stiffer that the blank will become. So when you're picking out, you know, if you're just gonna get one slow pitch rod and you're just starting out, you probably wanna start figuring out what gram size jig are you gonna be using. So these rods, as the power level goes up, it gives you a different gram size. So this here is a G3, and it says that it's rated from 2 to 500 grams. I found the sweet spot on these Temple Reefs actually to be like kind of right in the middle. And each rod manufacturer will vary on how they rate the gram size on their rods. Sometimes they'll just do a max. And really it's about knowing the rods, or knowing somebody that's fished the rods to know like where the real sweet spot is on the rods and the rod blanks. So some of the options that you'll get when it comes to a slow pitch rod blank is length. And you're gonna get a 6'9", you can get 6'8", some of them go to 7 foot, like the Johnny Jigs Pro Jigger. And then you get into, you know, the Innovate, which is an 8-foot rod. And the difference is that, you know, you'll be able to use a long fall technique as you get into a longer rod. So when it comes to picking out your first slow pitch rod, like I said, the gram size of the jigs that you're going to be using most is what's important. So as you're out there and you're jigging and you're lifting that jig up and you're pitching it, flicking it, and then letting it fall, what you're looking for is a full unload of your rod. So if you're out in 600 feet of water and you have a 500 gram jig on and you're using, you know, this G3, which is rated for 500 grams, but then you realize that even though you're lifting the rod and it's not fully unloading. So in other words, the rod tip is hanging down just like this and you're not getting a full unload of it, then you need to go up to the next power level. You need something a little stiffer with a little stiffer action for your fishery that's going to be able to flick the jig. So essentially, these rods, yes, they do have a soft tip, but you should be able to get a full unload of the blank whenever you're pitching a jig. And around here at the shop, we like to use an analogy to where if you've ever watched a hockey player do a slap shot and hit a puck in slow motion, you'll see that that hockey player will actually hit the ice first, and it loads that hockey stick and then follows through with the shot and smacks it. So that's what gives it that punch, that flicks the jig up. You know, so whenever you get the full unload of your rod tip, that's what's gonna make it to where your jig is moving through the water and you're actually getting, you know, a good pitch on the jig, and the jig is doing the action that it's designed to do. You'll notice that on the butt section here, there is no cushion here. And the idea behind that is that it'll give you extra sensitivity in the blank. Whether you need that much sensitivity or not is questionable. But what you have to remember whenever you're picking out these slow pitch rods is that if you're gonna be putting it in a rod holder on your boat and it's rattling around like this, what's gonna happen is it's gonna scar the blank right here, and then eventually it's gonna break. So whenever you're picking these out, you gotta realize that you need to have something that's gonna actually protect the bottom of the blank on your slow pitch rod whenever you pick it out. So that's really blanks in a nutshell as far as slow pitch rods go. Next option that you wanna look at is the guides. So what guide system is gonna work best for you? Which one do you like? They all work. This one here has a straight guide system. In other words, all the guides are perfectly lined up right on top of the rod. And what you'll notice here is that the forward guides are actually pitched forward on the rod. And that way, if the line comes over the top, then it will slide off, which happens to us a lot while we're slow pitch jigging. This is a great system. Another option that you'll have is if you check out the Johnny Jigs Pro Jigger, a spiral guide system. So if you watch these guides, they start to roll by about the second guide. And by this guide, it's actually sitting sideways. And you know, people will actually pick up this rod for the first time that's never seen a spiral guide system, and they're gonna be like, something's wrong. The rod builder made this wrong, but no, this is right. This is exactly how it's supposed to be. So the guides roll, and then by the time that you get down to the last few guides and to the tip is pointing down. And the advantage of this is that if the line goes over the top once again, then it falls off. Now, some people say that there's a balance thing involved in it because you're fighting with the line is going right over the tip of the guide and you have some balance. I don't know that I personally buy into all of that, really, but the benefit that I think of this for as far as slow pitch jigging is the fact that the line goes off. And there's a lot of consensus amongst, you know, some of my buddies that are professional fishermen that say that, you know, the straight guide system is perfectly fine because you need to be paying attention to what you're doing. While you're out there slow pitch jigging, you need to be watching your line. You need to be making sure that your line is not wrapping over the tip. So, you know, you're making conscious movements with the jig and you're paying attention to your line. For me, I do prefer the spiral because I know that my line comes over the tip from time to time. Granted, I've gotten a lot better at it over the years to where it doesn't do that as much to me, but it still happens. When the wind blows in your face, the line will tend to go over the top and slide off. So one more option that you have as far as guides and putting the guides on your reel, and I'm gonna show you this. It's called a neutral guide system. So we've already went through the straight guides, so that's where the guides are all right on the top and go all the way down to the tip. And then you have the spiral where they wrap around it. And now this is a neutral guide system. And you're probably thinking, what? How is there even another guide system? But I don't know if you guys can see this, but if you look down the guides of this one's directly on top, lined up with the reel. This guy goes to the left or your right just a little bit, and then it rolls back the other way until eventually your tip is pointing downwards. The benefit of this is it will assist with level lining. It's not going to level line for you, it's going to assist with level line. And that is granted that you're reeling up with the rod and the reel really parallel, you know, to the boat or to the ocean, whatever the case may be. So if you're leaning to one side and you're reeling up, obviously gravity is going to take hold and you're going to end up packing your line to one side or packing your line to the other. But there's a real benefit that, you know, this will counteract, you know, any little bit of offset on it, and it tends to want to go down the center of the reel and then piling it to one side and then rolling it back the other way. And that's really the big benefit of the neutral guide system, as well as that whenever the line goes over the top, once again, it's able to roll off of it. Another thing is you're gonna look at the guide sizes. These are micro guides. They're very small. You know, any type of big knots are just, they're not gonna slide through these guides. So what we use a lot of times is an FG knot, or we use a PR knot, and it's a very streamlined knot that will make it through these guides, because we do actually cast, or we pitch, we don't cast. So never are you taking a slow pitch rod and pitching it overhand or casting it overhand. It's more of a sweeping motion down below, and you flick the jig out and swing it out. So with that being said, you need a small knot that's going to be able to slide through these guides. And I would say that the biggest fail that I've seen happen most often is that the line goes over the top of the rod, and then what happens is it wraps it, a fish hooks up, and then the fish pulls. You know, you got a healthy fish and he rips off your guides on the top. So that's why you got to be really conscious of what you're doing, especially with these guides, because they are so small. As far as the inserts on these guides, you know, you'll have either an alkanite or a titanium, and that's really, you know, what's going to increase the cost of the rod, depending on what the insert is on the guides. And at the end of the day, you know, back in the day, I should say, you know, they would say that the braid would cut into the guides and then you're losing fish because, you know, essentially it's scarring the braid and it's not working well. The technology has come a long way since then. You know, whichever guide inserts that you have these days, they're designed for braid. They're not going to cut into the guides, and they're going to work just fine for you. One last thing that I would like to address about slow pitch rods, and whenever you're picking your rod, is that whenever you're fighting a fish, and this is a big mistake that guys make, so everything is just so counterintuitive to what you learn about fishing since you know, you were young. And a lot of us, you know, learn to, you put that thing in your hip and you pump and you reel down, right? You pump and reel down. With slow pitch, it's completely opposite. So what you'll notice is on the reel seat, and a lot of these companies will use the Fuji reel seats. We actually opted to use the aluminum reel seats on ours with the Pro Jigger. But you'll notice that there's a trigger right there. And that trigger goes right between here, right between your pinky finger and your ring finger whenever you're pitching the jig and you cup the reel. And then whenever it comes time to fight a fish, say you set up on the fish in this position, I actually will like to slide just a little bit forward so I'm controlling my line right here with this finger, but I'm also cupping the reel. I have control over the reel so I'm not spinning like this, and then I do not pump and reel. What I do is, you'll see me do sometimes just some short pumps, but I never go past parallel of the ocean. And for the most part, I will actually point the tip of the rod down to the water and then fight the fish with the reel. So there's a big misconception whenever it comes to picking out your slow pitch rod. And a lot of guys will say, yeah, well, I'm going for, you know, yellowfin tuna, or I'm gonna be catching, you know, massive groupers out there, and so I need the power 4, the power 5, you know, some of them go up to 11. I need the big strong one. And that's the misconception that's out there. So, and you know, we're trained to think that in our mind, but really you're not fighting the fish with the rod, okay? What you're doing is you're pointing the rod tip down and you're fighting the fish with the reel. So with that being said, the reel is what's important for fighting the fish. So if you're going out there for yellowfin tuna, big eye tuna, you know, and from my guys up in the Northeast tell me, you know, that generally they're up in the top 200 feet whenever they're getting them on the jig. So if you're in the top 200 feet and you're able to stay vertical with a 200-gram jig, then a Power 2 rod is probably right for you. And maybe because if you're sitting in 1,000 feet and these fish can sound on you, just so you have the line capacity, or you could even bump up, you know, your braid a little bit stronger so you could put some heat on them. You may want to go up to, you know, the 600 size accurate double in, or the Shimano Ocean Jigger 4000 or something of that nature to fight the fish. But the rod, you should stay with the Power 2, and that way you get the proper action on the jig. And so really, this is designed to work the jig, not fight the fish. There are some out there that you could fight the fish on. The ones that I prefer to use that have the better action are the ones that are not designed to fight the fish. They're designed to work the jig. It's simply a tool for putting an action on the jig. To break it down for you, you have 3 options on the guide systems. Which one do you like the most? You know, it's really up to you and what you want and what you're looking for. So you have a straight guide system, just like this Gravitate, the Temple Reef Gravitate, that goes straight down the rod blank. And then you have the option of a spiral guide system that you have here on the Pro Jigger, which spins around and ends up at the tip, going straight down. So the line goes over the tip and straight down into the water. And then the third one that you have would be the neutral guide system, like we have here on the Temple Reef Elevate. They all work, they're all great options. It's a matter of which one do you like the most. And then as far as the blanks go, really you have to understand that, you know, if you're gonna spend a little more money, you're gonna get a better blank, it's gonna perform better, it's gonna be better balanced, it's gonna give you a better unload on the jig. Is it completely necessary? Absolutely not. You're gonna catch fish on the cheaper blanks just like you're gonna catch fish on the very expensive blanks. You know, it's really, as you dig into this deeper, you know, some people just like to, you know, put their toes in the water, test it out, you know, and go with something that's not so expensive, see if you like slow pitch jigging, and then eventually upgrade into the next one. And so what happens is the one that you started out on is the one that you let your friends use, and then your expensive one is the one that you use. Really, when it comes to slow pitch jigging rods, you want to make sure that you're picking out the right one for your fishery. So it starts with, what gram size jig are you going to be using most of the time? You know, what's your range, and then pick out the rod that meets in that range. It meets all the criteria of what you want in a slow pitch jigging rod, and then you go from there. So guys, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. You could also follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and jig on.